Um, Hello po, good morning. Naririnig niyo po ba ako?
Morning, ma'am.
Ayun. So, start na po yung ating webinar. Magandang umaga po ulit sa inyong lahat. I welcome everyone po to our 7th webinar series. We will start na po our webinar meeting and we are currently live po via YouTube. Yan. We also have our Republic Act 10844. It is an act creating the Department of Information and Communications Technology that aims to promote digital literacy, ICT expertise, and knowledge building among citizens to enable them to participate and compete in an evolving ICT age. So I'll be your moderator po for this morning. I am Ms. Chirizina Narciso, a DICT intern under the supervision of Sir Koji Marquez, the Tech4ED coordinator in the DICT Quezon of the Department of Information and Communications Technology, Luzon Cluster 2. Yan. So before we start po, let's have an opening prayer and our national anthem po.
Dear God, thank you for the opportunity to meet together. Please help us to come together to make this institution reflect your kingdom. Breathe life into our ideas and decisions. Help us build a team that has love and respect at its heart. Give us the strength to continue working for your kingdom in this time of pandemic. Lord, come give us the inspiration to be the best we can be. May we be a shining example of your goodness and truth within, wherever we are. Inspire our thoughts, discussions, and ideas, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Bayang magiliw, pelos ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyat ka ng magiliw, sa manlulupit, di ka masisingil, sa lagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mo bahaw, ay nilang ang tula at awit sa
So we have here po our 7th webinar series, which is entitled Overview of Management and Organizations, Historical Development of Management and Schools of Thought. We also have these objectives po for this webinar. The Tech4ED project provides access point for individuals and communities to bridge the digital and education divide. It promotes grassroots development and opportunities for inclusive growth and poverty reduction. This webinar aims to raise the level of awareness of the public on the importance of information and communications technology to help educate, empower, and promote the ICT to individuals in the countryside by promoting digital literacy. And we also have our guidelines and reminders po during this webinar. This webinar is recorded for documentation purposes and will be streaming via YouTube po. Turn off your microphone and cameras po if it's not necessary. Do not share your screen or do any annotations. Observe proper decorum and etiquette. Use the chat box po for your questions. And certificates po will be provided to those who have attended the full duration of webinar and answered the post-evaluation form. Dito po, make sure po na valid po yung sagot natin. Otherwise po, hindi po kayo mapo-forfeit po yung e-certificate natin. And 4 webinar codes will be given in the duration of the webinar, which is needed in answering po the post-evaluation form. The first and last po will be coming from us po, and the second and third po manggagaling po sa ating resource speakers. So make sure po na nakikinig po tayo. And answer the question based on the webinar discussion. Also, please be more specific in your answers. Irrelevant answers in the post-evaluation form may lead to forfeiture e-certificate issuance. Ayan, and make sure po to please put your valid and active email address po, and the filling out po ng ating post-evaluation form is until today lang po ng 2 p.m. And ang pag-repeat po ng ating YouTube live po, mag-open lang po siya after po ng cut-off ng ating post-evaluation form. And ito po yung ating post-evaluation form. Ibibigay po namin sa ating chat box, but I will flash it po sa inyong screen for 2 minutes. And so here's the mandate and functions po of the DICT. The Department of Information and Communications Technology, or DICT, shall be the primary policy, planning, coordinating, implementing, and administrative entity of the executive branch of the government that will plan, develop, and promote the National ICT Development Agenda, or RA 10844. Ayan. We also have po our projects and programs po sa DICT. Here are some of them. Tech4ED, Free Wi-Fi for All, EBPLS, Digital Pre-Age, Government Emergency Communication System or JECS, National Broadband Plan, Central Business Portal, National Government Portal or gov.ph, Digital TV Philippines, National Cybersecurity 2022, Philippine National Public Key Infrastructure or PNPKI, and many more. And to start po our webinar, let us watch a video recording po from our Regional Director, Engineer Reynaldo TC.
Good morning, everyone, especially to our resource person, Ms. Janda Ira Felina Benedictos, who takes time out from her busy schedule just to be with us. On behalf of the Department of Information and Communications Technology to Sound Cluster 2, we wish to welcome all of you in our webinar in partnership with the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy in San Antonio, Zambales, entitled Overview of Management and Organizations, Historical Development of Management, and the School of Thoughts. Organizations started way back to the prehistoric time, when our ancestors start organizing themselves to hunt for foods, and even group themselves to cultivate land to farm for their foods. And since then, people are managing organization. Old school of management tends to be crude, brute, and maybe harsh, especially to the workforce. However, as time evolves, people, especially managers, develop and conceptualize management theories and frameworks that tend to help and improve management style and leadership. There's been a lot of theories, concepts, and ideas on management. There have been theory X, theory Y, management by wandering around, bureaucratic management, scientific management, administrative management, system management, and so on and so forth. So we are glad that you showed interest on how management of resources has evolved and keeps on evolving. We are sure that after this webinar, you will be equipped with knowledge on the different management theories, concepts, and ideas that you can use in your organization. Thank you and good morning, everyone.
Before we proceed po, ito ang ating first webinar code po na gagamitin po natin sa ating post-evaluation form upang ma-access po natin to. Ayan, please make sure po to screenshot or pakitandaan na din po. I will flash it again po sa inyong screen for 2 minutes. Ayan, now let us proceed po again for our 7th webinar meeting po, no? Now I'll introduce po to everyone our research speaker po for this morning. She is a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Economics, cum laude at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños in 2015. She finished with her Master in Management at the University of the Philippines, Diliman Extension Program in Olongapo in Zambales last year, 2020. She holds numerous key positions in her first and current agency, the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy or PMMA, such as Assistant Quality Management Representative, Assistant Research Director, Executive Assistant to the Office of the Superintendent, and among others. Today, she is the current Data Protection Officer or DPO at the PMMA who is tasked with protecting the individual's personal data, data collection, and data processing of the agency. She received the Best Oral Presentation, which is entitled Faculty and Students Perception of the Factors Affecting Pandemic Performance Basis for an Intervention Program at the 3rd International Conference Interdisciplinary Research in Higher Education in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Now let us all welcome our resource speaker po for this morning, Miss Maria Jandra Irafelina M. Benedictus. Hello po, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yan po. Good morning po.
Morning po. Okay, so to our participants po, here in Zoom and in YouTube Live, so I'll be discussing about the overview of management and organizations, historical development of management, and schools of thought. So before we start with the discussion proper, here is the second webinar code. I'll give you 2 minutes to screenshot it and remember it. Thank you. So again, good morning everyone. And now I'm gonna start with the discussion. So in terms of management, through the years, the world has seen a lot of changes encompassing to political, social, cultural, economic, and technological. In order to adapt to these changes, organizations today are looking for people with vision inside and outside of their own organizations. So as you can see in your own organizations, we are always hiring or looking for people who could contribute to the organization's goals and the objectives of the organization. So we will learn more as we progress towards this session. So organizations are as defined by DAF is a social entity that is goal directed and deliberately structured. So if you're an organization, you will not form a group just in order to say that you have a group. Okay, you need to have something that you want to achieve. That is why, as you can see in different organizations, they have their goals and objectives in order to lead and direct their personnel in what the organization is all about. And it is deliberately structured in order to see the different functions within that organization, which we will be discussing further as we progress with this seminar. So management is defined as the practice of consciously and continually shaping organizations in which it specializes in dealing with issues of time and human relationships. So the question is, why time and human relationships? Why is it one of the core concerns of management? In terms of resource, time is a resource that you could never return. Once it passed, time has already been spent. What about human relationships? In order to have a productive and goal-driven organization, you must make sure that relationships within the organization is okay in terms of top management, middle management, and of course, those who are in the roots of the organization in order for it to work together and in order for it to achieve its goals. So management and time. Organizations affects the past, present, and future. So these are the elements that Stoner and his colleagues considered that affects their idea about time in organizations. So as you can see, in those factors, one is consequences and effects that emerge over time. So right now, as you can see, there is a different approach in management because of the pandemic. Okay, so we keep the present situation in mind when it comes to management. So it is also a reflection of what happened in the past. But right now, as you can see, we are seeing organizations, even government agencies, adapting work from home schedules, flexible schedules because of the pandemic. So management should be flexible and adapt to what is happening over time. Okay, so the current situation is an example of how management is trying to adjust because of the current situation in the country and of course in the globe. So management and human relations. So what is with management and human relations? So it is important to have good relationships. So management act in relationships that are two-way streets. Okay, when we say two-way streets, it does only mean that only the management is adjusting or only the personnel is adjusting. That is why, as you can see in some organizations, most organizations, we have unions. So this is how the employees or the personnel are communicating with the management. So they lay down what they want, what are their plans, and the management is trying to compromise in what they could give with the people. So they are trying to maintain the rapport and camaraderie within the organization in order for it to work effectively and efficiently. Managers act in relationships that have spillover effects for other people, for better and for worse. So managers juggle multiple simultaneous relationships. As you can see, for a small organization, even 5 or 10 people, we could say that different people have different values and they share different cultures. So it is important that as a manager, you try to level that ground. So now, management is also defined by Richard Duff as the attainment of organizational goals in an effective and an efficient manner through planning, organizing, leading, and controlling organizational resources. So this is the management processes: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, which we will discuss further as we go along. So now, people who work towards attainment of the goals of the organization are the managers. So I hope that there are managers out here. So we have different management styles. So management is also case-to-case basis, and how you could see what is happening in your organization. As what we are saying, time and human relationships are factors in how you manage the organization. So now the question is, what defines a good manager? What defines a good manager? So we have been talking about efficiency and effectiveness, but what does this really mean? So when we say efficiency, efficiency means doing things right. It is an input-output concept. But that is efficiency. Efficient managers are those who are able to minimize costs of using resources, so like labor, material, and time, to achieve the goals of the organization. So that is what we say when you are efficient. It means you are doing things right, the right way, in order for you not to waste resources. Now, what about effectiveness? When we say effectiveness, effectiveness means doing the right things. It involves choosing the right goal. So what is the difference between doing things right and doing the right things? So this is what Docker has been stating, that no amount of efficiency can make up for a lack of effectiveness. Right? You might be doing things right, but the problem is it is not the right goals. So even though you're efficient, but you did not identify the right goals or the right things, then it will just go to waste. That is what Drucker is trying to say. So even though you are efficient, but do not choose the right goals, no matter how efficient you are doomed to fail. So let's remember that efficiency versus effectiveness. It is important that you are efficient, but first and foremost, you need first to set your goals, your objectives, which are really attainable and is apt for your organization. So now let's go to the management process. So this is the management process, which is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So now let's go to planning. So as you can see, planning, it is a management function that is concerned with defining goals for future organizational performance and deciding on the tasks and resources needed to attain those goals. So as you can see here, we have been talking about efficiency and effectiveness earlier. So as you can see, the first step in the management process, or the first factor considered, is the planning function. Why? Because in the planning setup, you will be now identifying your goals and objectives in order for you to be able to allocate resources. So when you have identified the goals and objectives, that is you being effective in identifying the right things. Now, allocating these resources is the first manifestation that you are trying to be efficient. Okay, so there is logic, planning, or rather an hunch involved in this planning. That is why there is a saying that goes that if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. Okay, because how could you go on without even knowing where you are going? So now, according to Stoner et al., plans serve as guides by which the organization obtains and commits the resources required to reach its objectives. So the chosen objectives and procedures should be consistent with that. So progress towards the objective is monitored and measured so that corrective action can get taken if progress is unsatisfactory. So as you can see, in the planning stage pa lang, you must be ready with your monitoring and evaluation so that if ever there comes a problem or you have not attained the goals, then you could plan again on what to do. Okay? So members of the organization carry out activities consistent with the chosen objectives and procedures. So as you can see, individuals in our organization is important. That is why we could, if you go into advanced management, you need to have the organizational culture, the behavior of people, because one of the key factors or one of the key resources in organization is its people. Okay, so we will go back again with time and human relationships because time is an important resource and humans is crucial in attaining goals and objectives. So organizing. So this typically follows planning and reflects how the organization tries to accomplish the plan. So organizing involves assigning tasks, grouping tasks into departments, delegating authority, and allocating resources across the organization. Organizing involves the members of the organization in the accomplishment of the plan in order for the organization goals to materialize. So kung minsan mapapansin nyo, we have restructuring, and of course, during the pandemic, a lot of companies have done restructuring in order to allocate resources efficiently, in order to attain their goals, because of the changing environment, there is a need to look at and review their organization. That is why organizing is equally important with planning. So next is leading. So it involves directing, influencing, and motivating employees to perform essential tasks. Okay, that is why leadership is important. The important elements of leading is time and relationships. Ito na naman tayo sa time and relationships. So managers need to create an atmosphere where the members of the organization could function at their maximum potential. So the manager tries to push and guide the members of the organization towards the accomplishment of the organization's goals. So as a manager, you also need to be a good leader because it's not always just about directing. Okay? However you direct them, if they're not properly motivated, then shouting at them or making your effort to reach out to them will not be okay if you are not able to influence them. That is why great leaders are those who could influence and motivate, those who could get the respect of their employees, because getting the respect equates to being influential, and that boosts their morale and in return motivates employees. We all know that there are certain motivations for employees, and it's not always about the remuneration. It also involves relationships and their relationships with the top management. Next is controlling. Okay, a manager should ensure that the organization is moving towards the goal. That is why this activity involves monitoring and empowerment. That is controlling. So what is its difference from leading and controlling? So leading is your action. Controlling are what the activities that you are trying to do in order to lead your people. So it establishes standards of performance, measuring current performance, comparing this performance to the established standards, and taking corrective action if deviations are detected. So basically, this is also seen in your HR component in an organization. And then in terms of the government, we have the IPCR, the UPCR, in order for you to gauge the performance of the people. Because if you don't monitor and evaluate the performance of the organization, then how could you say that you are performing well? Right? How could you say that that you are reaching your goals if you do not have these standards? So this function helps the manager keep tabs on how the organization is faring towards the realization of its goals. So many companies, according to Stoner, have formulated ways in order to inject quality to this function, and one approach is called the total quality management, which is focused on continual improvement. So I am assuming that almost all people, all of the participants here, their organizations have their ISO not certification. So there are different ISO families. As someone in the quality side, it is really focused on continual improvement. It does not stop on how you have perfected your system, because external factors would always be there, and you need always to improve and recalibrate your organization's functions and mechanisms. Okay, so that is what they're saying about controlling. So now we're going to go with the management levels. So there are three types: the first line managers, middle managers, and top managers. We will be discussing this one by one. So first line managers, they are in charge of managing non-management employees. They do not supervise other managers. They are in charge of the production of goods and services. So they are usually called as supervisors. So these are first line managers. So parang first line of defense sila. So doon muna sila sa kung ano man ang product or service na we are giving. Okay? Next are middle managers. So what are middle managers? They direct the activities of lower level managers and some operational employees. Their responsibilities include the implementation of the organization's policies through directing activities towards it. They also serve as middleman between the managers and their employees. So medyo dito ang tricky when you are a middle manager, because you're trying to empathize with the employees, but you are also trying to understand what the top managers are going through. So you need to communicate with them in order for them to understand each other and to make compromises. So that is a middle manager. Now, what about top managers? They are the ones responsible for the overall management of the organization. They are composed of a small group of people. They establish the operating policies and guide the organization's interactions with its environment. So they are often called chief executive officer, president, and vice president. So the burden of recalibrating, looking at our environment is with the top managers. So the next burden is how do they communicate it through the grassroots of the organization. So as you can see in a company, there are different levels of managers in order for them to look at the different aspects of the organization. Because if we only have top managers, then how could you better supervise your employees if you also are thinking about the current situation, the external factors affecting your organization? So you cannot work internally and externally at the same time without the help of other people. So now, managers has different scope of activity. So we classify them as functional managers and general managers in terms of their scope of activity. So what are functional managers? So they are responsible for one of the following areas: production, marketing, or finance. So kaya kung minsan ano nyo, chief operation officer for finance, so they are given their specific areas to look at. Those are functional managers in order for them to better equip the top management of what is happening in the organization, because they are specializing on that area. So as opposed to functional managers, we have general managers. So unlike functional managers, general managers are tasked to oversee a complex unit such as a company, a subsidiary, or an independent operating division. They are all responsible for the activities of the unit. So as you can see, ito yung may mga may iba't ibang branches and all. So those are general managers. So they need to see the production, the financial, and the operations of an organization. So let's take note that functional and general managers both plan, organize, lead, and control relationships over time. So now, how could you better serve as a manager? Of course, you need the skills. So what are the different kinds of management skills? So Henry Fayol, a famous management theorist, has identified three basic classification of skills. So each level of management should possess a certain type of skill. So ito yung sasabi nilang ideal skills that a manager should have. So management levels, ito yung top manager, middle manager, and first line managers, and then syempre the non-managers. So the top manager, as you can see, they need to have that conceptual skill. Mas malaking bulk ang conceptual skill, and yung pinaka-least is the technical skill. But when it comes to the middle manager and the first line managers, they should have more of the human skill. Okay? And then non-managers, those are technical skills. So bakit ganito kaya ang components when it comes to managers? So para malaman natin, let's see, conceptual skills, it is the ability to coordinate and integrate all of an organization's interests and activities. It involves seeing the organization as a whole, understanding how its parts depend on one another, and anticipating how a change in any of its parts will affect the whole. So as you can see sa conceptual skills, kasama dito yung foresight, kasama yung analyzation. So as a top manager, you need more of this. Because how could you make policies if you don't have the foresight, if you don't have the skill to analyze what is happening externally? But of course, you couldn't only be about conceptual. You could be good at analyzing, good at foreseeing events, but the problem is you don't have the human skill. So you couldn't adjust the policies where it could be acceptable to the people. And of course, the technical skill, at least you know what skills should be needed in order for you to make effective and efficient policies. Okay, because again, we have to do the right things and do those things right. Okay. So conceptual skill is the important skill to be possessed by a top manager. So as you can see, top managers don't usually, as they enter the company, they are already the top managers. As they progress, they are earning skills as they climb up the ladder. That's why we could see that in management, there's no such thing as a shortcut because management is a learned skill. And of course, it is affected by different factors. So you need the experience in order for you to be better equipped to be a manager. So now, what about the human skill? It is the ability to work with, understand, and motivate other people as individuals or in groups. So they're saying this skill is essential for managers who work with people in order to create an atmosphere that will encourage employees to work harder. That is why, as you can see in the previous figure, it is what the middle managers and the first line managers should have because they are the ones on the ground. They are the ones talking with the employees. So they need to motivate them. They need to transfer to them what the top management is trying to get to, where the top management's direction is. So as a first line manager and a middle manager, you need to be good with talking to your people because sometimes misunderstandings happen, then it also affects the quality of the work of the employees. And lastly, the technical skill is the ability to use the procedures, techniques, and knowledge of a specialized field. So, kadalasan, yeah, if you're an engineer, if you're about a nurse and all, doctor, of course, you need to have the technical skills of what you should do. But of course, you are not always bounded to be at that level only, using only what you have learned. Because as you progress, as you climb up the corporate ladder, technical skills is less important than conceptual and human skills. That is why, as you can see, some people are already at top of a university, an organization. They are now more concerned on policies rather than the technical skills. So now, after the skills, of course, managers has different roles. So what are the different roles of the management? So we have informational roles, interpersonal roles, decisional roles. So informational roles describe activities that will help maintain an information network. Okay, an information network. Next is interpersonal roles. This pertains to relationships. So this role utilizes the human skill of a manager and decisional roles. This is when the management need to make decisions. So these roles need conceptual and human skills. So as you can see, sa informational roles, so most probably these are people who monitor, disseminate, these are spokespeople. Whereas interpersonal roles, they are the figurehead, the leader, or the liaison. And decisional roles, these are entrepreneurs, disturbance handler, resource allocator, negotiator. So let's look at this. So informational roles, as what we're saying, they monitor, disseminate, or they are the spokesperson. So as a monitor, you seek and receive information, scan periodicals and reports, and maintain personal contacts. Because of course, in order for an organization to prosper, you need to be aware of what is happening. That is why we have these informational roles. As a disseminator, you forward information to other organization members, send memos and reports, and make phone calls. Now, as a spokesperson, you transmit information to outsiders through speeches, reports, and memos. So when we say disseminator, it is internally. When we say spokesperson, it involves the external environment. What about the interpersonal roles? So as a figurehead, perform ceremonial and symbolic duties such as greeting visitors and signing legal documents. As a leader, you direct and motivate subordinates, train, counsel, and communicate with subordinates. And as a liaison, maintain information links both inside and outside the organization. So use email, phone calls, meetings. Okay. Decisional roles as an entrepreneur, imitate improvement projects, identify new ideas, delegate idea responsibility to others. As a disturbance handler, take corrective action during disputes or crises, resolve conflicts among subordinates, and adapt to what is happening. Resource allocator decides who gets resources, schedule budget, and set priorities. When in terms of negotiator, represent department during negotiations, ito nga, union contracts, sales purchases, budgets, and represent departmental interests. So those are the management roles, but it's not limited to that. Siyempre, management nga, di ba? There are different approaches to management. So sa discussion natin nito, ito yung mga management roles na meron. So this is the next webinar code. So I'm giving you another 2 minutes to copy this or screenshot this. So now that we are done with the overview of management, now we will be talking about the history of the development of management. So the historical development of management, many changes have occurred, and these changes have shaped the theories that are now existing today. So DAF discussed three forces that influence organizations and the practice of management. And these are social forces, economic forces, and political forces. So historical development of management during the US Industrial Revolution. So ito yung pinaka-core na nakita nila that affected the management function. It began in the 19th century, where from an agricultural focused economy, the focus shifted to industrialization, resulting to the development of technology and improved communication and transportation, which led to more complex problems in relation to the new emerging industries. So as you can see, kung makikita natin yung evolution ng humanity, we started with the hunting, gathering stage, and then now we are here with the factories, the services. So after the Industrial Revolution, as you can see, the main industry that is right now happening is the service industry. So now on this industrialization is taking place, many new problems arose, resulting to the need of large organizations to develop a new approach to coordinate and control, which gave birth to a salaried manager, a new subspecies of the economic man. Ito yung sasabi nila, a salaried manager. So kanina nga, dinidiscuss na natin kung ano ang isang manager. So it acknowledged theories, okay, theories for this, acknowledge that after they are tested, modified, and synthesized. So isa sa mga meron dito sa ating mga management theories is the scientific management school. Its emphasis is on jobs and management practices that are determined scientifically, which will result to improve efficiency and labor productivity. So ito yung scientific management school natin. Isa sa mga nauna na theories of management. So binulk to, meron scientific, may behavioral, and mamaya makikita natin kung ano pa ang iba. So scientific management school. So one of the scientists who are under this is Frederick Winslow Taylor. So he is the father of the scientific management school. He proposed that workers should be retooled like machines, their physical and mental gears recalibrated for better productivity. He also suggested that the rule of thumbs be replaced with precise procedures that were scientifically developed. His philosophy can be seen from his statement that in the past, the man has been first. In the future, the system must be first. So why is this called a scientific management school? So alam naman natin yung scientific process eh. Diba ang scientific process, there are clear defined steps. So yun ang sinasabi ni Frederick Winslow Taylor. We need to have those procedures set. We need to have the standards in order to raise efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, so he's not saying that you only need talented and skilled workers, but you need to have a working system, an efficient and effective working system. So he rested his philosophy on 4 basic principles so that the best method for performing each task. So the development of a true science of management so that the best method for performing each task could be determined. The scientific selection of workers so that each worker would be given responsibility for the task he or she was best suited. The scientific education and development of the worker, intimate, friendly cooperation between management and labor. So as you can see, this is what he identified as ingredients for a good management system. So he also developed an incentive system which proved to be effective. Okay, so let's try to thank him because he thought about incentive systems. So when we say incentive systems, this is not just about monetary incentives. These are rewards. It could be through certificates, through recognition, because yeah, people are social animals. So it is not only important for us to have money, but of course, money is really important, but we also want the sense of accomplishment, the sense of recognition. So we want that our efforts are not left unseen. So that is what Frederick Winslow Taylor is looking at. Now, another theorist in scientific management school is Henry Gant. So you must be familiar with him because in terms of organizing, in terms of our reports, in terms of our timelines, we are usually using the Gantt chart. So he is the one who developed the Gantt chart. It is a bar graph that measures planned and completed work along each stage of production by time elapsed. So of course, yun yung Gantt chart na na-develop niya. But as we progress, because management is ever-changing, marami na rin ang naidagdag sa Gantt chart. We try to modify and customize it as to what is necessary for our organizations and for our reports. So he collaborated with Taylor in many projects. When he began his own practice, he modified the incentive system of Taylor. Instead of just giving incentives to laborers, he also included supervisors so that they would be more efficient and effective, and they will try to motivate also their employees. Because of course, if supervisors are motivated, then they could really influence also their subordinates to be effective and efficient. So next, in the list of the theories of the scientific management school, we have Frank and Lillian Gilbreth. Okay, Frank focused on time and motion study. Most of his management techniques are independent from Taylor. So he gives importance to efficiency and looking for the best way to do the work. His study on time and motion was of great importance to medical surgery. So he's trying to see kung saan ang pinaka-effective, saan malilesen ang time when they are doing these things. What should come first, what should come last. So Lillian Gilbreth, on the other hand, was interested more on the human aspect of work. Okay? Kung si Frank ay interested siya sa how dapat yung process mag-go on, Gilbreth, Lillian is more on how you should treat humans. So the scientific management school has effectively increased the productivity and efficiency. They have given importance to compensation, but it does not give importance to the higher needs of the workers and treated them as laborers and did not consider the ideas and suggestions. Why? Because in the scientific management school, it gives more importance on the process. As you can see, the different theories under this school, except for Lillian Gilbreth, there are more on how could you improve the system so that the system would be forcing or motivating the laborers to do work in the most quality way. So as you can see, they are putting the system first, as what Taylor has been saying, that if humans are first in the past, now the system is first. Because they are looking at the processes, not on the humans who are doing the processes. Okay, they're looking at how they could shorten the time frame and all. Now, because of that, the classic organizational theory school arrived. So it grew out of the need to find guidelines for managing complex organizations. So what makes an organization complex? So there are different factors affecting it. One is the humans, one is culture. So as you can see, it became complex because we need to consider several factors in terms of organizations. So the classic organization theory school has Henry Fayol. So a French mining engineer who worked his way up to become head of a major mining group known as Commonwealth. So Commonwealth survives today as part of the Le Creuset-Lorraine, the largest mining and metallurgical group in Central France. In his most significant work, General Industrial Management, Fayol discussed 14 general principles of management, several of which are part of management philosophy today. So when we go to those slides, I could say that you are familiar with some of these principles, if not all. So division of labor. The most people specialize, the more efficiently they can perform their work. This principle is epitomized by the modern assembly line. So as you can see, right now, we have departments that are committed to doing this, units are committed to doing that. because they're saying that specialization could improve effectiveness and efficiency. That is why we have the division of labor. Even naman sa household duties pa lang, as you can see, management starts in our household. So, di ba kanina sinabi nga natin, Greek Romans pa lang meron ng management. So, you can see naman in building the pyramids, you could see how effective and efficient they build it, because up till now they are still standing. The precision of how they have laid down those bricks. So it proves that their supervisor or the manager that time has really done their job well. So next is authority. Managers must give orders so that they can get things done. While their formal authority gives them the right to command, managers will not always compel obedience. Okay? Unless, of course, if you have found the right a way to do it. Discipline. Members in an organization need to respect the rules and agreements that govern the organization. So in a way, discipline helps you establish authority. So if employees are disciplined, then it will be not a problem for someone in authority to compel them to obey. Now, unity of command. Each employee must receive instructions from only one person. That is why we have our immediate supervisor, so that we only receive instructions for them. Because if an employee has a lot of bosses, a lot of managers, then how could he or she know what to do or where the direction is headed if there are different opinions that are in effect? So that is why the next part is unity of direction. These operations within the organization that have the same objective should be directed by only one manager using one plan. Okay? So in using one plan, it is also beneficial for a company to only use one plan first, because you could identify where it went wrong, if ever it went wrong. So you could see what factors have you did not see, and whatsoever that went wrong with your procedures and processes. Next is subordination of individual interests to the common good. In any undertaking, the interests of employees should not take precedence over the interests of the organization as a whole. That is why it is important in organizing or managing people that you give to them your objectives and goals. And it should be, if not aligned with them, they should embrace it so that they could align their personal goals towards that. It should not be that the company's goals should be aligned with the individual's goals. So remuneration, so compensation of work done should be fair to both employees and employers. Of course, if you sense unfairness, then how could you work well if you think that it's not fair? That is why, as you can see, diba, there are, of course, there are strikes in some companies, organizations, which cost a lot for those organizations because operations will be halted. And of course, if they're on strike, as you can see, it's good that right now it's not happening, but we have seen strikes that have gone awry, that have gone the wrong way, where people got hurt. At the worst case scenario, there are people who, of course, died because of the commotion and all. So that is what we are trying to avoid here. You need to be fair with our workers. Next is centralization. So decreasing the role of subordinates in decision making is centralization. Decreasing their role is decentralization. Increasing their role per se. And then the hierarchy, the lines of authority in an organization. Order, materials and people should be in the right place at the right time. So hierarchy, medyo may pagka-bureaucracy to, pero you need to be clear kung kanino ka talaga nagre-report in an organization. Kasi ang sinasabi natin kanina, di ba? We have the unity of command and unity of direction. So now, equity. So ano bang difference ng equality sa equity? Ito yung parating tanong, lalo na pag college ka, lalo na pag nasa economic subject ka. Now, when we say equity, you should give what is needed. Whereas equality, you're giving them all uh, uh, uniform benefits. Whereas in equality, equity, you're giving them what is due to them. So managers should both be friendly and fair to their subordinates. Stability of staff. A high employee turnover rate undermines the efficient functioning of an organization. When we say turnover rate, ito yung pag-alis at pagpasok ng mga empleyado. So having a high turnover rate is really bad for an organization. Why? Because you need to train them. You have already built them. But of course, if you have a high turnover rate, it means that you have not built a person who is also goal-directed and knows the functions and the ins and outs of your organization. So how could you function properly if every month you have a new employee who will be again trained, who would learn all the ropes again and the reins of the organization? Initiative. Subordinates should be given the freedom to conceive and carry out their plans even though some mistakes may result. So ito yun. Sa stability of staff, this is connected because if you are already in the organization for too long, you would be confident enough to take the initiative to do something for the organization. That is why before we reorganize or before we put people in key positions, or managers think about it, the top managers think about it first because it would greatly affect the operations if in the next month you need to ask that person or fire him because he's not competent enough, then another series of interviews. It's not only the operations that is hampered, your resources. It would be costly for you to train again, interview, to undergo again the process. And lastly, esprit de corps. Promoting team spirit will give the organization a sense of unity. Okay? This is esprit de corps because if you are united, that is why, di ba kanina, unity of command, unity of direction, then you would be working with your colleagues more in getting towards the direction of the institution or the organization. So those are the 14 principles of management by Henry Fayol. So as you can see, this is practiced really in the organizations. Okay, so Henry Fayol also identified 5 basic functions of management: planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling. Pero di ba kanina yung na-discuss nating management functions is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So si Fayol naman, meron siyang 5. Planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling, which is similar to the current management process. Kasi ang nangyari is, commanding is more on like sa leading, and then coordinating and controlling, it was merged into controlling. So it looks the same as our current management functions. So the next one in the classical organization theory school is Max Weber. So he is a German sociologist who developed a theory on bureaucratic management. It stresses the need for a strictly defined hierarchy which is governed by clearly defined regulations and lines of authority. So when we say bureaucratic, so we could see really who is the head. So it gives focus to hierarchy, which is for some organizations, some modern organizations today, they don't practice this a lot. Kasi diba, we can see that there are organizations right now that are flat na, which is not very steep. Hindi ganun ka-steep ang hierarchy. Pero ito nga ang paniniwala ni Weber. You need those lines, okay, to establish authority. So he believes that bureaucracy is the ideal organization and that performance evaluation should be based on merit and technical competencies should be given importance. So he's saying that it's not only about your conceptual or human skills, but also what you can do, what you can offer. So bureaucracy, organization with a legalized formal and hierarchical structure, also refers to the formal structural processes within an organization. So as you can see, kadalasan naman is meron talaga silang lines of authority. Pero right now kasi medyo diluted na itong bureaucracy in modern organizations because they're trying to get the opinions of other people na hindi siya ganun ka-steep na ang dami pang kailangang daanan bago makarating sa top management kung ano yung plans and programs mo. Next in the classical organization theory school is Mary Parker Foley, one of those who contributed to the basic framework of the classical school. But she introduced new elements like human relationships and organizational structure. So dito na, nagsistart na tinitingnan talaga ang human relationships. So her model, the holistic model of control, paved the way for the expansion of the management theory by including relationships, not only inside the organization, but some relationships across the borders as well. It takes into consideration the environment that the organization has, which is affected also by politics, economics, and biology. So nakikita niyo na ngayon, tinitingnan niya na talaga what really affects the organization aside from the processes. So she is looking at the human factor, which is us. Okay, so how could an organization progress or function without humans? Okay, we are admitting it, digital age ngayon and all, but of course, we still need humans in order to function properly, even though we have the machines, because there is always that human factor. Now, we have also Chester I. Barnard. So what is with Chester I. Barnard? He also introduced new elements in the classical school. Basing on his experiences, he stated that people who join organizations while pursuing its goals will also form informal groups within the organization in order to pursue their individual needs. So, eto na yung, di ba, medyo nagko-contradict na dyan dun sa 14 principles ni Fayol, which hindi pwedeng mag-take precedence ang individual interest bago ang organizational goals. Pero dito, we couldn't do away with this. I agree with Barnard on this, that of course, in pursuing the goals, you are working towards the goals, you are practicing esprit de corps, then of course, if you have the same likes, the same interests, you tend to bond with people. So it's not only one group, you will have informal groups, okay? You would admit or not, in terms of your organization, you have identified cliques, okay? So hindi lang sa high school yung may grupo-grupo. Even in their workforce, even in their work environment, there are cliques, there are groups. So you share the same ideas, the same principles, the same values. So this premise of his leads to his assumption that an organization will be efficient and survive only if achieving the goals of the organization is in balance with the aims and needs of the employees. So ito na tayo. Nung sinasabi na niya ngayon, ang goals mo dapat is naka-compromise ka din sa kailangan ng mga employees mo. So nandito na yung human skill. Andito na may voice na ang ating mga employees. So he introduced the employees zone of indifference, which is the activities that employees are willing to do without questioning the manager's authority. So dito na yung foresight dapat ng manager. Hanggang saan mo ba kaya siyang i-pressure or kayang i-utilize nang hindi siya magrereklamo, that they will not feel that it is unfair already. Okay, so sa ibang companies, diba, uso yung multitasking. So how do they assign people to multitask? So alam ng tao na etong sahod ko. So I'm doing this kind of work with this kind of remuneration. Now, ito na po, pasok na talaga yung pag nakita mo na yung values tsaka culture ng tao. Yun. If it would be okay for him or her to work more hours. So now, kailan mo ba talaga bibigyan ng overtime pay? Dito na yan po pasok. He also stressed that importance of executive managers on instilling on its employees the sense of moral purpose. Ito na yan, ginamit na niya ang sense of moral purpose na this is for the company, this is for the organization. So you need to give your best in terms of performing for the organization. So ito yung dapat, kaya nga diba sinasabi natin, managers should be influential and should be able to motivate their employees. Kaya doon importante, doon pumapasok ang influence and motivation in terms of how could you make your employees work harder? Now, this school emerged, yung behavioral school, partly because the classical school was not able to achieve sufficient production efficiency and workplace harmony. So, pumasok na ang mga theories na behavioral school. So, it is also dubbed the organization is people. So, now we are giving importance to people na. Okay? Kanina kasi dun sa classical, partially pa lang nila kino-consider na importante ang tao sa organization. Here, in this school, they are giving much more importance to people. Now, so the behavioral school, the organization is people, human relations movement. So what is the human relations movement? The idea of this theory is that an effective control of employees does not come from a strict and authoritarian management, but rather from within the individual. Many psychologists have explored this idea, and one of the famous experiments that have utilized this idea, maybe you've heard of this, is the Hawthorne experiments, mainly conducted in the Hawthorne plant in Chicago of Western Electric. So who did this experiments? So human relations movement, Hawthorne experiments, it was under the guidance of Elton Mayo and Fritz Roethlisberger. This experiment concluded that if employees feel that they are given special attention and if their supervisors take their welfare into consideration, this was called the Hawthorne effect. So dito makikita daw na pagka feeling nila ay may care sa kanila ang kanilang mga supervisors, they would be working well. Okay? Ginawa kasi dito sa experiment na to, may isang hindi sila binigyan talaga. They are not really given all that they needed for them to work efficiently, and the other group is given the light and all. And they found out that if they felt that the people, even though they are not really monitored, they work harder when they felt that they are given what they are needed in order to work efficiently and effectively. That is what they're saying with the Hawthorne experiment. So from human relations, the focus shifted to behavior. Okay? Kasi kanina sinasabi nila natin, di ba, human relationships. So Mayo and his colleagues pioneered the use of the scientific method in studying the environment where people are working in, which led to other researchers who have specialized in other fields of social sciences to conduct more sophisticated research, and they are called behavioral scientists. They brought about two new dimensions in the study of management and organizations. So first, they developed a more sophisticated view of people and their drives compared to that of Mayo and his colleagues. So Abraham Maslow and Douglas MacGregor discussed about the self-actualizing people. So ito yung mga feeling ko sa inyo na mga participants na to. Dito kayo mas mas kilala nyo tong mga to, si Abraham Maslow and Douglas MacGregor. Kasi since elementary, they are being discussed in, of course, talaga si Maslow is elementary, high school, college is always present. So Douglas MacGregor naman, for those who are taking management, always siya nag-appear sa mga books. So let's look at Abraham Maslow. He stated that the needs of people can be ranked or are hierarchical, the last stage being self-actualization. He further stated that in order to reach the higher order needs, the lower level ones must be satisfied. So many behavioral theories have issues with its model, stating that it is not a description of universal motivation. Why? Diba meron na tayong physiological needs, security needs, safety needs, bago ka makarating sa self-actualization. There are people that they need first yung safety needs or security needs before yung mga physiological needs like food. Kasi nga, ang sinasabi ng iba, this is also case-to-case basis kung ano ang gustong mo unahin. That it is not a universal description of what people really want. Pero syempre, ang binigay lang ni Abraham Maslow is what he had observed from his study group. Okay? So what he's saying is, kaya nga marami ang ayaw mayroong mga ayaw ng idea niya kasi ang sinasabi nga niya, in order for you to get the next need, you need first to satisfy the first need that you have. Hindi pwede na hindi mo pa ito na-satisfy ka na sa next na higher order need mo. Now, what about Douglas MacGregor? He presented another view on the complex person. He had two assumptions, which he calls Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X managers should continually coax their subordinates so that they will work better. Yun yung sinasabi niya. Yung sinasabi natin that they need supervision. Yun yung sinasabi niya. Kailangan mo i-supervise ang tao para magtrabaho sila. Hindi mo sila pwedeng pabayaan. That is what Douglas MacGregor is saying about Theory X managers. Whereas Theory Y managers thinks the opposite. They believe that people will eagerly do better because they see it as an opportunity to develop themselves. So ito yung sasabi natin na meron daw initiative ang tao. Ito yung pinapaniwalaan ng Theory Y managers. They give them the work, do not pressure them, do not coax them, do not monitor them frequently because they would be doing that because they want to improve themselves. So wala namang tama o mali sa Theory X and Theory Y manager. It's just about the mindset of a manager. Baka mamaya ang nakikita niya talaga, he needs to push them because they're not really motivated. That is why he is monitoring them. Whereas Theory Y managers believes that they are really motivated and influenced by his leadership. That is why they could leave them unattended. So that is the difference between Theory X and Theory Y managers. So now behavioral school or behavioral science approach. So what's with the behavioral science approach? Second, they applied the methods of scientific investigation in studying the manner of how people behave in the organization. So ang scientific process kasi is, alam naman na natin yan, you start with observing and all, you do the experiments, you have to conclude. So that is what they did with the behavioral science approach. That is why, as you can see, there are a lot of studies on how to improve efficiency and effectiveness in an organization. There are a lot of studies about motivation, about control, about monitoring them. So ganun katindi when it comes to management. When it comes to management, there are a lot of references that you could get. Okay, so if you want to learn more about management, the internet is there, the library is there, and of course, first-hand experiences matters the most because as we can see, organizations are complex, humans are complex. So in order for you to get more better insight in terms of management, you need to be in the field. So now we have the management science school. So operational research teams were established during World War II by Great Britain in order to solve complex problems in warfare. This team is composed of individuals from different fields which proved to be successful. This became the basis of the Americans when they entered the war. They called it operations research. Then nakita nila na they need to have a team in terms of this kasi di ba kanina sinasabi nga natin specialization increases efficiency. So now they have seen that if they have different individuals from different fields that they specialize in, then the success rate would be much higher. So the management science school, so after the war, the applicability of operations research to problems in industries became known. Factors became complicated like transportation and communication, which lead to the need of OR specialists, which is now known as the Management Science School. Kasi as you can see, diba, as time progressed, because of technology, because of everything, it became really complicated for us to have transportation, to have communication. Lalo pa ngayon, we have hackers, we have scammers, so that's the problem. At present, the approach of management science is solving problems involves a mixed team of specialists from relevant disciplines to analyze the problem. So one way to better picture this out, sa hospital, di ba? Meron tayong cardio, meron tayong naka-assign sa internal medicine and all because as a human person, iba't iba ang functions ng ating body. So there's someone who have to specialize on that. That is why dito nila nakita na in terms of management, you need to have a core team that has a different views on what is happening so that they could share their ideas. And it leads to a better plan because there are less things that you will miss out because there are a variation of opinions that will come into place. But of course, the challenge is how could you mix all those without having conflict? So the modern management school, we have the systems approach. The management views the organization as unified purposeful system composed of interrelated parts. This enables managers to look at the organization as a whole and a part of the external environment. Kasi diba, ito yung titingnan niya nila. Lahat ng departments ng units are interrelated in terms of organizations. You could see that naman in your organizations. Kung anong ginawa nitong isa, they would be forwarded to another department. And even though it's just a little thing, it would really affect the organization. So if it has an effect on the organization, then in return, it really affects the department and units of your organizations, the branches, the sections. So ganun tayo when it comes to the systems approach. So key concepts of the system approach. Subsystems, the parts that makes up the whole. Synergy means that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Okay? Para natin sinasabing the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So sabi natin si finance, si accounting, na pinagtrabaho mo sila ng iba't iba, tsaka mo sila pinag-add. Pero kung may synergy, if they work together, mas imbes na arithmetically, magiging exponentially ang kanilang potential at ang kanilang production or yung kanilang efficiency. Because if they work separately, okay, ginawa ni accounting yung ganito, yung ganyan. Pero the problem is yung pala, may kailangan pang paper si supply unit. Hindi yun nakita ni accounting. Kasi yung tinignan niya lang yung pagkwenta, paggawa ng pagbayad, pero yung pala, naka-supply pa yung papers, supporting papers. So that's the problem. Kung walang synergies isang organization, if they're not working together, a lot of things could be missed out or a lot of things could not be given importance kasi nga hindi na nila nakikita kung saan nag-overlap ang kanilang processes. That is why we're saying that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Means that as separate departments with an organization cooperate and interact, they become more productive than if we are to act in isolation. Kahit naman, di ba, when it comes to experiences natin sa mga projects, when we work in teams more than when we work alone, okay, we achieve much better results if we work in teams. Next, open and closed systems. So when we say open and closed systems, open system if it interacts with its environment, closed system if it does not interact with its environment. So yun siya sa key concepts of system approach. Now, system boundary, it is what it separates it from the environment. Siyempre, lahat tayo may boundaries. Hindi naman pwede na parati na lang, open ka lang doon sa may external environment mo. You also need to have a controlled environment. Next is flows of information, materials, and energy. Kaya nakita nyo kanina, di ba, meron tayong managerial roles. So nakita nyo kung gaano ka-importante ang information. That is why we have informational roles. Materials and energy. Di ba kanina may decisional roles tayo? Interpersonal roles. So yun. How could you communicate with other people kung as a manager, hindi mo alam kung anong role mo sa iyong company? So feedback, key to system controls. Okay, feedback is really important. That is why it is always included in the monitoring and evaluation phase in an organization. Even in projects, di ba? Meron kayong monitoring plan because feedback would help you in the improvement of your system. As what we are saying, we are for continual improvement. Okay, we need not to be complacent because of course nakita nyo naman kung anong ginawa ng complacency sa Kodak, sa Yahoo. Because of their complacency, naunahan na sila. Okay, siguro naman familiar kayo sa nangyari sa Kodak. So Kodak, is, siguro naman may mga nakaabot pa dito ng Kodak. So, ang ginawa nila is, printing of pictures. So, sila yung film pa. And then, one of their managers or one of the components in their team said that there is this digital camera, which they just did not consider. And lo and behold, nangyari nga ang digital cameras. And now, sino pa ba ang kadalasang naggagamit pa ng film? So, saan na sila ngayon? They are more like syempre, ang trend ngayon is your Polaroids. So, yung mga films ng Polaroids, they still have that production. Pero ang nangyari, may mga nauna na sa digital camera. And of course, in the industry, the first mover advantage is really a great advantage. Kasi nauna ka nang ilagay ang sarili mo dun sa may business na yon. Let's take for example then Nokia. Nokia in the early 90s is the top selling phone. Pero what did they do? They did not consider eto nga ngayon, yung meron tayo ngayon na Android phones. Okay? So they thought that they will always be at the top of their game. Pero right now, andyan na si Samsung, andyan na si Apple, nasa na si Nokia ngayon. They are trying to revive themselves right now. Pero yun nga, they need to innovate, they need to find other things. That is why, as you can see, information is important, feedback is important. Okay? Don't set aside feedback because it's really important in improving your system. So this is the systems view of an organization. So we have your environment, your inputs are your raw material resources, information resources, human resources, financial resources. Then we have the transformation process, which is where your management production technology is. It comes into action. And then outputs, employee satisfaction, product services, profits or losses. So this is where your feedback will be coming from dito. Okay? So kung nasatisfy ba yung employees mo, then lo and behold, your human resource management office is really effective. Pero ano pa kaya ang kailangan ng employees mo? That is why, di ba, may last question tayo parate. What are your suggestions or recommendations to improve the system? Yan. Then, here, products and services. Kung walang negative feedback sa products and services mo, so great. If there are negative feedbacks, embrace it. Try to change it. It's not try, change it. Or yun nga, nagsasabi natin, products and services, kung merong innovation that you could see, try to study it, try to adapt to it. Okay? Kasi right now, in terms of technology, we need to be really flexible and you need to adapt to our ever-changing environment. Kasi nga, since nung advent ng phones, in one snap, nag-iba bigla. At a certain given point of time, yung keypad phones, and then later on, naka-touchscreen na tayo, and we don't know what else is in store as we progress to this digital age. Next is profits or losses. Ito yung pinaka-clear na feedback talaga if you are really performing well dito sa mga kinita mo. Then of course, environment. So it is important that you really watch out for the factors that would affect your organization. Hindi mo pwedeng ikulong ang sarili mo sa organization lang na, we're doing well, we don't care about what is happening externally. Because it would really affect you. Lalo na, di ba, political-wise. Okay? Because see, di ba, nung ang nangyari na merong dispute between USA, Mexico, Canada, so they could place restrictions. So it's important that you know your environment. Lalo na kung ikaw ay exporter, you need to know kung saan tayo may mga free trade agreements and all, kung saan ba may conflict. So, ganun ka, ang environment. Ganun siya ka-crucial in terms of analyzing your management decisions. So, the modern management school, the contingency approach. So, what's with the contingency approach? Sometimes called the situational approach. It was developed by managers, consultants, and researchers who tried to apply to real-life situations the concepts of the major schools. Nung kanina, yung mga iba't iba natin din-discuss. So they are looking for explanations when a highly effective model fails in a certain organization. They look for the reasons of the failure. So dito pa lang, as you can see, even though how effective a model is, kasi may ibang organizations, di ba? Of course, if you're an organization, you will be researching kung ano ba ang pwede sa inyo, kung anong applicable. Now, bakit biglang nag-fail ang isang for most companies is effective? So, yun yung titingnan nila. Saan niya ba nagkamali? What is the root cause? That is why, as you can see, di ba, for those who are in the quality side, there are root cause analysis in order for you to trace what happened in your quality system. Tapos we have the risk management approach para dun pa lang is makikita nyo na kung ano pwede maging problems in your system. So advocates of this approach believes that the task of managers is to identify the technique will in a particular situation under a particular circumstances and at a particular time best contribute in reaching the goal. So nakikita nyo kung gaano ang pressure sa isang manager kasi kailangan nilang tingnan kung ano ba talagang appropriate for an organization. Hindi pwede na effective kasi ito sa isang organization, sige, ito na lang i-apply natin. It's not that easy. Because yung sasabi nga natin kanina, you need to have the foresight, you need to have the conceptual skill, you need to have that knowledge in order for you to work effectively and efficiently as a manager. So the contingency approach mixes all the schools of thought and looks at which is the most appropriate for a certain organization in a certain situation. So nakita niyo itong certain situation, di ba? Balik tayo dito sa pandemic. Because of our situation, bigla itong mga managers natin, nag-iba na. Pati ang monitoring, evaluation natin, nag-iba. Kasi nga, we need to adapt to what is happening. Okay? So in summary, up till now, management theories are still evolving. Everything is continually changing. That is why there are approaches like the dynamic engagement approach that is brought about by the changes. We also have the total quality management where continual improvement is a focus. We will encounter new approaches as years pass by because the factors, political, economic, cultural, and social, surrounding us and affecting the environment of organizations have this factor of uncertainty in them. These theories serve as guides for organizations on how their management should be in order to respond to the needs of the industry. But managers do have to apply their skills in order to function properly in the roles that are given to them and how to approach and solve problems within the organization. So yun ang meron yan sa mga management theories natin. And as of now, siguro marami pang schools of thought na madidevelop, lalo na sa current situation natin. So, if you want to read more, these are the references that I've used for this presentation. So, thank you for listening, and I hope you have picked up something from this presentation. So, now, for a chance to win 100 pesos GCash, this is for our participants in YouTube Live. Let us see who could answer the following questions. So 3 participants will win the 100 pesos GCash. Sir KJ. Ano po? Nandiyan po ba ang ating moderator po?
Yes po, ma'am.
Ma'am, I'll be starting na po yung questions. Okay
Yes,
po,
po.
our first question is, it is defined by Stoner as the practice of consciously and continually shaping organizations in which it specializes in dealing with issues of time and human relationships. Again, it is defined by Stoner as the practice of consciously and continually shaping organizations in which it specializes in dealing with issues of time and human relationships. So what is the answer? Ma'am, saan mo natin kukunin ang winner, ma'am?
Ang sabi po ni Sir KJ, I think pwede naman po sa paunahan lang po ata.
Ma'am? Hi, ma'am.
Yes po. Ang sabi po ni Sir KJ, it's on YouTube Live po.
Hello po, yes po.
Po.
Yan,
Saan po
hello, Sir
kunin ang
KJ.
ating winner po?
Sa ating YouTube live po, ma'am.
May nakakuha na po ba ng tamang sagot sa number 1 po?
Yes, ma'am. From Joel Juanzo.
Okay, so congratulations, Mr. Joel Wanzo. So the answer to this is management. So ito yung isa sa mga una nating slides. Okay, so congratulations po. Sir, kayo na po ang kukuha ng number niya po for GCash niya po.
Yes po, ma'am. Kay Sir Joel Juan ko po, please email po yung inyong email, yung pong phone number and your full name po sa aming official Gmail po ng ang aming office at dict.quezon@gmail.com. So, chat ko po dito ang email po, dict.quezon@gmail.com. So, please email po ang inyong GCash number and your full name po.
Okay, so next question po. May dalawa po tayong 100 pesos. The next question natin is, according to Douglas McGregor, theory blank managers believe that people will eagerly do better because they see it as an opportunity to develop themselves. Again, according to Douglas McGregor, theory blank managers believe that people will eagerly do better because they see it as an opportunity to develop themselves. Okay po, may nakakuha na po ba ng tamang sagot? Sa ating mga YouTube live participants?
Yes, meron na po, ma'am.
Okay po, sino po, sir?
It's from Mark Anthony Gamuza.
Congratulations, Sir Mark Anthony. May 100 pesos po kayo sa GCash. So, katulad po ng sabi ni Sir KJ kanina, ganun lang po ang gagawin ninyo para ma-claim po ninyo ang inyong 100 pesos. Okay, and for our last question, para sa 100 pesos through GCash, the management function concerned with defining goals for future organizational performance and deciding on the tasks and resources needed to attain them. The management function concerned with defining goals for future organizational performance and deciding on the tasks and resources needed to attain them. Okay po, may nakakuha na po ba?
Okay po. Meron na po. So, yung pong kukuhanin ko after yung pong dot ko, yung nag-dot ako. So, it's from Jobel Tuasa.
Congratulations po, Miss Jovel Tuaza. So, same din po. So, ang answer po kanina sa number 2 is theory Y or Y na manager. And then for number 3, it is, ano ang sagot? It is the planning function po. Okay, so thank you po for listening. I hope you learn a lot po.
Ayan po, thank you po, Miss Janda, for sharing po your knowledge regarding management and the historical background po behind it. And I'm sure po marami pong natutunan yung ating mga participants po sa inyong presentation. Now let us move on na po sa ating question and answers po. The floor now po is open para po sa ating mga participants po na may question. And aanyayahan ko po kayong sagutin po yun, ma'am, and I will read the questions po for you. Ayan po, pwede na po kayong magtanong. Ayan po, ma'am, meron po tayong question from Sir Nathaniel Garcia. What do you think is the best approach or best school of thoughts of management po?
In terms of that, in my opinion, I'd be going for the management, yung current, yung management school of thought, management, because it is now mixing yung human relationships and then yung process mismo. So in doing the processes, you are now taking into consideration the humans. Hindi katulad ng ibang schools na ito process lang tinitingnan niya, whereas this humans lang. Now they are looking at how they could jive humans and the processes. Lalo na ngayon na digital age tayo. So in terms of processes kasi we have many yung mga computers and all. So it's important that you take into consideration kung hanggang saan ang kaya ng yung mga employees so that you could give them the proper training kasi diba, they are now using the scientific method in investigating. So by doing so you could make analysis on what are the training needs of your employees, which is really important. It's not only for the efficient and effective processes in your organization, it is also for the development of the human that in return, they would feel motivated to work harder for the company. I hope I answered your question.
Meron po tayong question again po from Sir Maynard Capil from the LSUD. My question is, what is the best management style in remote working setup po?
In a remote working setup po, dito po papasok yung theory X and theory Y manager natin per se. Because, tulad ng sabi ko, wala tayong ganun talaga na kung ano talaga ang dapat. Pero in terms of this, if in the management style, if you are a manager, you need to take in consideration the profiling your employees. Kung saan ba talaga, paano sila nag-work well. That is why it is really tricky for a manager on how to motivate and influence their subordinates. So for example, because of this work from home schedule, masasabi ko lang is you need to establish the standards and you need to give them what you expect from them. Okay? You need to make a clear line of what is expected of them and what they have to deliver by the end of the day or by the end of the week. Okay, so what is important is you give them the direction. So you need to be both hard on them in terms of authority, but you need to be empathic also with their needs. So ganun siya katikit because there's a fine line of being empathic and being in authority. Kasi 'di ba sa ngayon, ang dami kasing mga ano, 'di ba? Ang daming factors na i-consider na their mental health, which we couldn't set aside. So as a manager, we need to be informed of those decisions. So the best management style during the work from home is based on what is your organizational culture and how you know your employees. Thank you po.
So, ayan po, meron po pong last question from Sir Maynard Capil. What is the difference between leading, coaching, and mentoring po? In your own perceptions daw po.
In my own perception po, in terms of leading, coaching, and mentoring. When it comes po kasi sa akin sa mentoring, it's more on yung ano niya, yung nakikita niya yung ginagawa mo. Okay? When it comes to mentoring, they would be observing how you are really doing it. So, kung ikaw ay mentor ng isang tao, you would be doing the job while they are there. So, in terms of mentoring, you would be also giving them the job, looking at them if they're doing it well, but you are only there to look at it. Mentoring siya. Whereas yung coaching kasi, you're gonna be guiding them step by step. Whereas sa leading, they're gonna see you how you do it, but you're giving them the free hand on how they would be doing it. Okay? Kasi in terms of leading, you will be influencing them to do their best. So yun po nakikita ko na difference for me ng leading, coaching, and mentoring. In terms kasi sa coaching, you would be molding them directly as what you want. Whereas ang mentoring kasi, you will be giving them examples through your actions. Whereas yung leading is, you are motivating and influencing them. So it's up to them if they're really gonna adopt what you're doing or they're gonna find ways in order to get to that end goal. Yun po.
So, ayan po. Ito naman po from Miss Hannah. Aside from subordinate being evaluated, should the manager also needs to be evaluated if they are being effective manager po?
I'm really up for that. Okay, so how do you evaluate if a manager is also a good manager? There are informal ways, like, syempre, we could say that high turnover rates also says a lot about how you are as a manager. The rate of absenteeism also says a lot of how you are being a manager. So we have also those formal ratings. It is important that you also rate the manager because we're saying for continual improvement. So as managers, we need not to be balat sibuyas. We need to be open to criticisms so that we could improve ourselves. Because in life, as we go on, there are things that really we overlook. So we need to not believe always that we are the best version of ourselves. Okay, so it's important that managers should also be evaluated because, of course, especially those first line managers, you will be the ones leading those in the production processes or in the services sector. If you're not an effective manager, dun pa lang may magkakaroon na ng problems sa operations niyo. So it's important really to evaluate also the manager.
So next question po from Ms. Amy Castro. Do you believe that there is no such thing as perfect management style? If so, why or why not?
Is this for 10 points po? Charot. Okay, so in terms of that, yes, there's no perfect management style. I believe that there's no perfect management style because, yes, what I have been saying earlier, we have to consider the culture of the person, the behaviors, the values of that person in order for you to better engage them to be working. And then in terms kasi sa management style, in my own experience, there are people talaga na they want yung Theory X na manager na gusto nila parati silang namomonitor kasi feeling nila they're given importance if they are monitored. Whereas there are others na ayaw niya magpa-monitor kasi that is pressure for him or her. So that is why I don't believe that there's a perfect management style, but there is an appropriate management style.
Yan po. So, eto naman po from Sir Jed Christian Sese. Which is better, leading or manager po? Leader or manager?
Kung ako po ang tatanungin, it is a leader with good management skills. Pa-safe. Kasi in terms of that, being only a manager does not guarantee na ganun ka magiging effective ang iyong supervise sa mga employees mo. Only being a leader is also not that sufficient. That is why I think that a leader with good management skills is a must for every organization.
Yan po. So, ito naman po from Mr. Kent Joseph Ortula. When managers or supervisor deeply considers the mental health of its constituents, what management theory do such practice lies?
When managers supervisors deeply considers the mental health of its constituents, what management theory do such practice lies? So, kung doon po tayo sa mga behavioral approach na schools po tayo, kasi doon nila tinitingnan. So right now po siguro there are developments na po na they are looking at na may iba pang theories for this. Kasi 'di ba recently lang tong mga yung naging hindi na siya taboo sa ating society na meron kang mental health problem. Okay, let's admit it. People are just tolerating it. Some people are just tolerating it. Some are not really accepting of it. Na ang tinitingnan lang is this is palusot, the mental health. So I think as of now, dun sa mga diniscuss ko, it's on the behavioral approach. Pero yeah, I think there are theories na in the works for those managers who considers the mental health of its constituents. So we could also look at yung nakita ni Fowler na yung a holistic person, as a holistic person, ang tingin niya yun sa tao.
Ayan po. Ito naman po from Mr. Neil Mark Galang. What is an ideal management for you po?
Okay, so an ideal management for me, textbook na naman bang aking isasabi? Pero hindi. And say an ideal management for me is someone that listens to the non-managers. Ideal management takes into consideration the needs and the opinions of those who are not really managers, because they are the ones who are seeing what is happening on the front lines. So it's important that first line manager, so pag sabi natin nakikinig si top manager, first line manager should be able to communicate to those middle managers what really is the problem in the grassroots of the organization. And those middle managers will not ano ba to? Will not eliminate any information, that they will not sugarcoat things. So for me, an ideal management is an honest one. They are the ones who are saying what. Yes po?
Ayan po.
Okay.
So far po, wala pa po. Ayan, meron pa po ulit from Mr. Maynard Capil. Aside po sa usual team building, one-on-one meetups, what other activities you have in mind to improve camaraderie, trust, and teamwork po? Ito po.
Syempre, di ba, parati naman tayo sa mga parties, gano'n. So, parang team building na rin siya. So, in order to improve teamwork, maganda talaga siguro yung meron talagang mga projects na ang gagawin mo is you would be getting representatives from different departments and units, so that hindi lang sila sa department sila yung nagkakakilalan. And of course, di ba, sasabi nga nila, specialization. So it's important that your project teams merong na galing sa ibang unit, so that they could say, naku, meron bang challenges in terms pagka ito yung ating in-implement, merong ganito sa aming department. So it's also one way of building teamwork and hitting two birds with one stone, doing your work.
Ayan. Ito naman po ulit from Mr. Kent Joseph Ortula. As manager or supervisor, ma'am, how do we deal with toxicity that informal groups inflict upon the workplace? What measures could we use?
Okay, so ito yan. As manager supervisors, yung mga informal groups, di ba? Hindi ko lang alam, pero syempre sa government, meron tayong grievance committee, di ba? So ito yung pagka meron talaga tayong problem sa government is dito sinasabi. So siguro meron dapat tayong committee, or in terms of measures na pwedeng gamitin is, ang matindi kasi talaga is you need to inculcate in them that we are an organization. So orientations, yun yung mga team buildings, or weekly meetings sa within the department, informing them of what we are going, what direction are we going to. And then, yun nga, in terms of informal groups kasi, yun ang pinakamahirap talaga i-control. Alam nyo lang, ang toxic talaga, lalo na in terms of gossiping and all. So, one way of improving that is, siguro dun tayo sa fairness talaga. Kasi pagka may fairness na, it would lessen their need to go to the gossip mill.
Ayan, ito naman po from Mr. Kim Jason. What, in your opinion, is the relationship between contingency management or skills and conflict interest in assuring an organization's good organizational practice po?
What is your opinion between contingency management skills and conflict interest in assuring an organization's good organizational practice? Okay, in terms of this kasi, if you, di ba, ang una natin talaga sa management function is planning. So it is a good organization practice if you could also foresee na kung anong meron. That is why you could make separate plans na contingency plans. So it is a good practice talaga kasi you could see where it could go wrong. So importante kasi hindi naman sa pessimistic ang ating view in life, pero it's important that you are prepared of what could happen. Yun yung maganda if you have contingency management skills. Kasi you could lessen the risks of failing if you have already considered those factors, and you could now prepare for resources or backup plans. So yun yung tingin ko na maganda talaga na ang isang manager merong contingency management skills.
Ayan. Ito naman po from Mr. Nathaniel Garcia. What is your view in multitasking? What will affect the efficiency and effectiveness po?
I would be lying if I say that it will not affect efficiency and effectiveness. So now, if you're doing multitasking in your organizations, best way that it would lessen yung pag ano ng efficiency and effectiveness is to make sure that those positions they're holding or the work that they're holding are interconnected. Okay? So that it would lessen yung pagiging kalat ng utak niya na ito pala to, ito pala to. It is really evident na multitasking could decrease efficiency and effectiveness, but multitasking with work that is connected could help na syempre ang resources mo would be used in a more efficient manner. So yun.
Ayan, ito naman ulit po from Mr. Neil Mark Galang. Good management and low compensation or good compensation and not so good management po?
In my own opinion to, no? Oh my God, mga pang Miss Universe na ata to. In my own opinion, kung ganito ang titingnan ko, in my personal opinion, I've been going with good management and low compensation. Okay, kasi right now, even though, sige, given muna na yung low compensation na yung makakabuhay naman ng pamilya. Wait lang. So, nakaka-burn out in terms of sa mental health and all. Mas nakaka-burn out kasi yung, yeah, you're being paid a lot, pero the stress of working for someone who does not understand your opinion or getting your opinion, or someone who is very toxic, would really take a toll on not only your mental health, but your physical health. Kasi you'd be exerting much more effort. So it's like the high compensation would just be like canceling out the low management would cancel out the high compensation. So doon ako sa good management pero low ang compensation. Because it means if it has good management, then it has good incentive and reward system other than yung other monetary.
Ito naman po from Mr. Arjon Caballero. We have seen for over hindi po siya question. Siya nabasa. Sorry. Ito naman po ulit kay Sir Maynard Capil po. In management standpoint, how do you manage waste in an organization in terms of people, process, and others po?
Waste po?
Waste po, as in waste.
W-A-S-T-E po?
Po. In an organization in terms of people, process, and others po.
How do we manage in terms of organization? Kaya nga, di ba, doon tayo sa planning stage pa lang. You need to know how to allocate the resources. Lalo na yung human resource. Lalo na, minimum natin sa hindi, organizations mahilig yung manghatak ng mga tao for special projects. So doon pa lang, you need to weigh the pros and cons of getting a person from another department if it will affect your operations. So mahalaga na in order for you to accumulate less waste or no waste at all, mahalaga yung mapping, mind mapping pa lang. So that you could see kung saan ka magkakaroon ng waste, kung saan yung operations mo mahahamper because of your decisions. So importante, doon natin nakikita, importante ang planning na function. And then of course, organizing. Doon na. Importante ang planning and organizing. So after that, yun na nga para sa waste lang. Okay, so after that, implementation tayo, which is in leading and controlling. So it's important that you bear in mind, you keep in your heart yung management functions natin. Kasi by doing them right, hindi naman ina-assure yung success, but it would limit the wastes and it would lower the chances of failure.
Ayan. So far po, wala na po ba tayong question? I will give po at least 3 minutes po para sa ating mga questions if meron pa po. Then if wala na po, we can proceed. Chat lang po natin sa ating chat box po yung ating mga tanong, pati po sa ating mga YouTube live viewers po. Ayan po, no, mukhang wala na. So we can proceed na po, no, sa ating next slide. Ayan po, ito po ano ating closing remarks. Let us all welcome po our OIC, Technical Operations Division po of Luzon Cluster 2, Department of Information and Communications Technology, and Engineer Mario Antonio V. Ayay.
Hello, wala pong sound.
Yes, okay, wait lang po. I think po merong technical. We will proceed na lang po sa ating awarding. Ayan, ito po. This certificate of recognition is given to Miss Maria Janda Ira Felina and Benedictos in grateful recognition of her invaluable support as resource person during the webinar entitled Overview of Management and Organizations, Historical Development of Management and School of Thoughts of the Technology Empowerment for Economic Development Program of the Department of Information and Communications Technology, Luzon Cluster 2. Ayan. Ito na po yung ating fourth webinar code. Please make sure po to screenshot and tandaan na po natin. I will flash it po again sa inyong screen for 2 minutes po. And once again po, ito po yung ating guidelines and reminders. Certificates po will be provided to those who have attended the full duration of the webinar and answered the post-evaluation form. And ayun po yung ating 4 webinar codes po na nabigay during this webinar po. Needed po siya sa ating post-evaluation form and answer the question based on the webinar discussion. Also, please be more specific in your answers. Irrelevant answers in the post-evaluation form may lead to forfeit your e-certificate issuance. Yan. Input po yung ating valid and active email address. And when filling out po yung ating post-evaluation form, the cut-off time po is until today at 2 p.m. lang po. And the live stream po again, magre-replay lang po siya after po mag-close ng ating post-evaluation form. And once again po, ito po yung ating post-evaluation form. I will flash it again po sa mga hindi pa po nakakuha ng post-evaluation form po for 2 minutes. Ayan. And follow us po on Facebook, the Department of Information and Communications Technology, the ICT, at the ICT Gov PH, Department of Information and Communications Technology, Luzon Cluster 2 at the ICT.LC2, the ICT Quezon at the ICT.Quezon, Tech4ED program, Luzon Cluster 2 at Tech4ED.LC2. Ayan. For our ending po, we have here po our quote from Steve Jobs, founder of Apple Incorporated. My job is not to be easy on people. My job is to take these great people we have and to push them and make them even better. And ayan, thank you po ulit for attending our webinar sa ating po mga participants sa ating opening remarks, ang ating regional director na si Sir Reynaldo TC and our OIC po, si Mr. Young. And ang aking supervisor po na si Sir KJ and my co-intern po for technical, Mr. Enrich. And ang ating resource speaker po na si Miss Janda Benedictos. Thank you po. And before po ending, pwede po bang mag-picture taking muna po tayo? Pwede po ba kayong anyayahan na mag-open ng camera? Ayan po. Ay, wait lang. Yan po. So, ayan na po, no, 4 po to. So, hindi ko po alam nasang slide po tayo. Smile na lang po tayo. Yan, so first slide game. 1, 2, 3, and smile. Ayan po. Yan, next po. The second one po. Yan, smile lang po tayo. And then 1, 2, 3. Ayan. Okay. Wait lang po, save ko muna po. Ayan. Sa ating third window na po, no? Yan, smile lang po tayo. 1, 2, 3, and smile. Ayan. Okay po. And the fourth one po. Ayan. Smile lang po. Ayan. Okay na po. Thank you. Once again po, thank you po sa mga participants.